Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Now 24 Nightly News. I'm your host, Miriam Zian, and here are your top stories. On the 104th day of the genocide against the Gaza Strip, the Zionist entity has carried out at least 15 new massacres in which more than 24,600 Palestinians have been killed and over 61,830 injured since the beginning of the aggression. Next, Algeria reiterates her full support for South Africa's lawsuit against the Israeli occupation before the international justice. And Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf stresses that the region is witnessing a real danger of a regional war during the meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement Ministerial Committee on Palestine. The Houthi group announced renewed American and British bombing on a number of Yemeni governorates, and Tehran summons the Pakistani chargé d'affaires after the missile strike that targeted a border area, killing at least 7 people. Hello again and welcome. The Palestinian Health Ministry spokesman Ashraf al-Qudra confirmed that the Zionist occupation committed 15 massacres in the past 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. Massacres resulted in a tragic loss of 172 martyrs and 326 wounded. The toll of the Zionist aggression on Gaza now stands at 24,620 martyrs and about 62,000 wounded since October the 7th. 19 Palestinians, mainly children and women, died in an occupation air bombardment that targeted a Palestinian family's home in Rafah, southern Gaza Strip. The onslaught extended to various regions, including Khan Yunis, Al-Nusayrat, Jabalia, Al-Maghazi, Al-Burayj, and Rafah, with explosions rocking the center of Khan Yunis.
After 104 days of unrelenting aggression in Gaza, there is no respite for its residents. The occupation aircraft intensified bombings in the southern Gaza Strip, directing their fury at a family's house in Al Junaina neighborhood, east of Rafah.
I was in school when the strike happened at dawn. I found the rubble and went to the hospital, discovering all my grandchildren had been martyred. They are all young children, the oldest in 2nd grade. We're not counting on anyone or on Arabs. We are counting on ourselves because the Arabs are dead. Everyone is watching us die and doing nothing. If a Zionist's fingernail is touched, everyone pays attention and says Palestinians are criminals. We are considered criminals, but it is unfair that these houses, these young children sleeping peacefully in their houses, are being killed.
A midnight bombing claimed 19 Palestinian lives, mostly women and children, alongside numerous injuries. In past 24 hours, occupation aircraft launched raids on Khan Yunis, Al-Nusayrat, Al-Maghazi, Al-Burayj, and Jabalia.
The house next to us was bombed, and the shrapnel hit us. They damaged everything. Our homes and possessions were destroyed. Yesterday, I was playing with the children over there. They have all died. I'm the only one still alive. May Allah have mercy on the dead and give comfort to their families.
Bombardment persists from north to south in Gaza, with many martyrs still trapped under rubble, hampering rescue efforts by ambulance and civil defense crews. The escalation unfolds on 7th day of complete internet and communications interruptions in a sector besieged since October 7, enduring cutoffs in electricity, water, and fuel. Despite confirmation from United Nations and international organizations that aid entering Gaza falls far short of the 2.4 million people's needs, the grim reality persists.
The coordinator of emergency medical team at the World Health Organization, Sean Casey, highlighted the dire conditions in Gaza's hospitals, describing a rapid deterioration in the health system and a diminishing level of humanitarian aid, particularly in northern areas. Casey expressed concern over severe injuries, with people waiting for hours or days for treatment.
I saw evidence again and again of the simultaneous humanitarian catastrophe that's unfolding. We see it every day in Gaza, getting worse and worse, and the collapse of the health system day by day, with hospitals closing, health workers fleeing, casualties continuing to stream in, lack of access to medicines and medical supplies, a lack of access to fuel to run hospital generators, to keep the lights on, to keep the machines running.
And in the same context, the World Health Organization also explained that hospitals are facing a flood of displaced people, as thousands of them were forced to take shelter there after fleeing their homes.
Basically, the whole hospital was filled with displaced persons, thousands of them, reportedly tens of thousands of them, living in the operating theaters, living in the corridors, living in the stairs. And the emergency department, seeing hundreds of patients a day, mostly trauma, with only a handful, literally 5 or 6 doctors or nurses to care for all of those people. Patients on the floor, so many that you could barely move without stepping on somebody's hands or feet. In Al-Ahli Hospital, also in the north, I saw patients who were lying on church pews, basically waiting to die, in a hospital that had no fuel, no power, no water, very little in the way of medical supplies, and only a handful of staff remaining to take care of them.
Qatar on Wednesday announced the start of shipments of medicines and aid into the Gaza Strip under an agreement signed between the occupation and the Palestinian resistance group Hamas. The agreement includes the entry of medicines and a shipment of humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza, especially in the most affected and damaged areas, in exchange for delivering medicine needed by Zionist hostages in the Gaza Strip. The European Parliament adopted a resolution calling for an unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza on Thursday. The resolution, which is non-binding and highly symbolical, was adopted by 312 votes in favor, 131 against, and 72 abstentions. This is the first time that the European Parliament calls for a ceasefire after lawmakers in October agreed on a call for a humanitarian pause.
Ed è approvata. Passiamo ora alla proposta di risoluzione di mano.
And Al-Qassam Brigades published scenes of its fighters clashing with Zionist occupation soldiers and vehicles in Al-Tufah and Al-Darraj neighborhoods in Gaza City. Here's the footage.
يلا توكل. بسم الله الله اكبر. For their part, the Quds Brigades, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement, announced that it was waging fierce clashes with machine guns and vehicles with the Zionist occupation on the front lines of East Jabalia. Al-Quds Brigades, in a statement, added that its forces also engaged in fierce clashes with the Zionist occupation forces with machine guns and anti-tank missiles in the front lines,
in the center, in the east and south of Khan Yunis. Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf said that the crimes committed by the Israeli occupation are not new. But what is new is the highest levels of barbarism and brutality it has reached in committing the most heinous crimes that have claimed a huge number of dead for more than 3 months. During the meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement Ministerial Committee on Palestine held in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, Attaf stressed that the Zionist occupation seeks to exterminate the largest possible number of Palestinians and displace those who remain alive to achieve its military and political goals. The Algerian foreign minister stressed that the region is witnessing a real danger of a regional war that will sweep the entire region.
The aggression inflicted on the Palestinian people, which turned the Gaza Strip from a collective prison into a mass grave, eyes, efforts and speeches are focused on post-war arrangements, while the logic and the necessity require that the highest priority be given to implementing a ceasefire and ending the aggression.
Mr. Attaf also stressed that the efforts are focused on post-war arrangements, while the highest priority should be given to ending the aggression and implementing a ceasefire. Here's the Algerian Foreign Minister.
Algeria is calling for reactivating and reviving the small-scale group of the non-aligned states represented at the UN Security Council, and to give this bloc the mandate of taking real initiatives to bring the Council to assume its responsibilities in order to stop the Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip and lift the blockade imposed on it and put an end to the forced displacement of Palestinian residents, in addition to breaking all the restrictions imposed on humanitarian aid.
The Algerian diplomacy chief also emphasized that any post-war arrangement imposed on the Gaza Strip cannot succeed except by imposing a comprehensive ceasefire and holding the occupation accountable for its crimes against the Palestinians.
Any post-war arrangements imposed on the Gaza Strip cannot succeed unless they comply with the following 4 obligations. The first obligation is ending the war in Gaza and imposing a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire. The second obligation is holding the Israeli occupier accountable for its systematic crimes against the Palestinian people and to put an end to the privilege of non-responsibility, non-accountability and non-punishment that this occupation has always benefited from. From here, we welcome the complaint lodged by the sisterly Republic of South Africa before the International Court of Justice and call for a similar complaint before the International Criminal Court.
Still within the same context, Algeria reiterated its support for the lawsuit filed by South Africa against the Israeli occupation before the International Court of Justice. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry stated that Mr. Ahmed Attaf reiterated Algeria's full support for South Africa's move to prosecute the Israeli occupation before international justice during a lengthy meeting with his South African counterpart Naledi Pandor on the sidelines of the preparatory ministerial meeting for the 19th summit of the non-aligned movement in the Ugandan capital, Kampala. The same source added that the 2 parties took advantage of this opportunity to consult and coordinate on many issues of common interest. And Turkey and Jordan have rejected the forced displacement of Palestinians and stressed the necessity of immediate end of the aggression against the Gaza Strip, in addition to funneling urgent humanitarian aid to the besieged Strip. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said in a joint press conference with his Jordanian counterpart, Ayman As-Safadi in Amman, that this massacre must stop immediately and the illegal blockade imposed on Gaza must be lifted.
I had the opportunity to speak with the foreign ministers of both countries this morning. They explained their positions and gave the reasons for their actions. We, as Turkey, recommended that the problem should not escalate further and that calm should be restored as soon as possible. Both sides said they did not want to see the events spread further and that they took them under control.
For his part, Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman As-Safadi said that there are clear priorities for Jordan and Turkey, which are stopping the war on the Gaza Strip and bringing aid. Let's take a listen.
With regards to the current priorities, they are clear: ending the aggression in Gaza, letting in sufficient permanent humanitarian aid to all parts of the Strip, south and north, stopping the destruction and working immediately for the return of displaced Gazans to their areas and homes that they left.
Irish Foreign Minister urged the Zionist entity to end its genocidal war on Gaza as quickly as possible, adding that a military solution will not resolve the conflict. Let's take a listen.
In my view, well, it's absolutely unacceptable that the Prime Minister of Israel would say that this war will go on until 2025. Too many innocent lives are being lost. Too many children are losing their lives. And you cannot resolve a situation like this by military means alone. I understand the raison d'etre of addressing Hamas because of what Hamas did on October the 7th, which was, and I visited Kibbutz Be'eri to see for myself the violation of that neighbourhood, which was horrific, can never be justified in any shape or form. But equally, you cannot resolve issues like this on military grounds alone. We know this from our conflict in Ireland. For 30 years, we had violence. A military solution on its own will not work.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the solution to the conflict in the Middle East must go through the establishment of an independent Palestinian state in line with the Security Council resolutions and international legitimacy. In his press conference in Moscow, Lavrov stressed that without a definitive solution to the Palestinian issue, Palestinians will continue to live in injustice and persecution, as he put it, pointing out that he will deliver a speech before the UN Security Council next week about proposals that include collective effort to resolve the conflict in the Middle East away from individual proposals.
Next Tuesday, a special UN Security Council meeting on this issue will take place. We plan to participate and I am to head to New York for this purpose. There we will present our proposals that are aimed at resuming collective initiatives, rather than attempts to sort everything alone. A line should be drawn and such a line should be the creation of a Palestinian state. I very much hope that the Israeli leadership will come to this conclusion eventually, as not everyone there currently considers this acceptable for Israel.
The Houthi group announced on Thursday renewed American and British bombing on a number of Yemeni governorates, as we mentioned in our top stories earlier. This comes as U.S. military said its forces targeted 14 missiles that were ready to be fired in Yemen, while Houthis said they will not call off their strikes. Also, as you followed in our top stories, Tehran announced it has summoned the Pakistani chargé d'affaires after the missile strike that targeted a border area and killed at least 7 people. Official local media sources said that after the Pakistani attack in the morning on a border village in Sistan, Balochistan province, the Pakistani chargé d'affaires in Tehran was summoned to the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to provide an explanation on the matter. Algerian Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi headed on Thursday to the Ugandan capital Kampala, representing Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune to participate in the proceedings of the 19th summit of the non-aligned movement. A statement by the Algerian Prime Ministry said Nadir Al-Arbawi will also participate in the third summit of the G77 and China, which is scheduled to be held during the period from the 19th to the 23rd of January. In the same context, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf held bilateral meetings during the preparatory ministerial meeting for the 19th summit of the non-aligned movement in Kampala. Meetings with Mozambique's Foreign Minister Veronica Makamu focused on intensifying coordination and cooperation in the Security Council. Mr. Attaf also discussed Middle East, Horn of Africa and Sahel region developments with Kenyan Foreign Minister Musalia Mudavadi and expressed satisfaction with progress in bilateral cooperation with his Cuban counterpart Rodriguez Barilla. Practical steps to enhance relations between Algeria and Belarus were agreed upon in talks with Belarusian Foreign Minister Sergei Alyanik. And for more international news, let's watch this report by Nabil Khazini.
China said it is willing to play a constructive role in easing tensions between Iran and Pakistan. Experts say Beijing could play a role in bringing about a diplomatic solution to the issue that saw a further intensification after Pakistan struck Iran a day after Tehran carried out strikes on Pakistan. 80 migrants from 2 different wooden boats were rescued in the Atlantic Ocean by Spanish Coast Guard on Thursday. Official data show that in January, the number of migrants entering Spain illegally by sea has jumped nearly 300% so far compared to the same period last year. With as much as 38 centimeters reported in some areas, heavy snow enveloped much of western Canada and the US Northwest. Environment Canada issued snowfall warnings for several regions. A temperature of -18 Celsius was reported in some areas, well below the normal high of -3. Iceland's president said it was unclear when residents of an Icelandic fishing town next to the site of a recent volcanic eruption would be able to return home, and that protecting human lives was the main priority. A flow of red-hot lava last Sunday reached the outskirts of Grindavik, a fishing town of some 4,000 residents, setting 3 houses ablaze, but causing no harm to people who had been evacuated for a second time since November.
That was it for tonight's program. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in and have a good night.